Okay. Call to order. Do I have a motion on the minutes from June 16? Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I make a comment on your third goal? Just, I know I'm not part of the committee, but I think there's a word missing.
Okay.
I think it should say implement the new math curriculum.
Yeah, doing everything 7 through 12 might be a problem.
Thank you.
If you're trying to put me in the hospital, that's how to do it.
Okay, well, let's try not to do that.
Please.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended? We need a roll call vote since we have a remote member attending. Jamie?
Aye.
Dawn? Aye. And aye for me as well. And we're going to backtrack because we have a remote member. You need to state your presence and why you're attending remotely or whatever. Good for the minutes?
Yeah, so I'm away. I'm in Deadwood, South Dakota. I'm in a hotel room by myself.
Thank you. Okay. All right, agenda item number 1, grading and communications report. Dr. Haynes?
Yes, so I just want to quickly go through and have folks introduce themselves as we've got some new faces here, and then we'll talk a little bit about the work we did this summer on the grading and communications aspect, and go from there. So Troy, you want to start?
Troy Kennett, new principal at Baker Elementary.
Christine DeRochers, Director of Academic Intervention, Assessment and Accountability.
Ryan McCluskey, Memorial School Principal. Brian Stack, High School Principal.
Patty Haynes, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Tom Ambrose, Superintendent of Schools.
Steve Kuznowski, Assistant Principal.
I'm K6 math coordinator.
Matt Malilla, Principal, Middle School.
Thank you, everybody. So this summer, we had taken some time, and at the end of the year last year, at the end of the school year last year, I passed out some books to all the board members from Thomas Gusky, On Your Mark and Get Set Go, that specifically talked about grading, what needs to be graded, how to grade, grading communications, getting folks on board. And the administrative team also read those books, and based on our reading of those books, we put together a grading manual for teachers that the EISA subcommittee actually got a preview of, but we're not going to be sharing that with the public as yet because the teachers haven't received it yet. But basically what the manual does is it walks through all of the different components of what we expect when our teachers are going to be going through and doing some grading. And we're looking specifically this year, especially at why. Why are we grading different components that students are working on? And that's a big question that we're going to be focusing all of our grading work around. And we're going to be looking specifically at the evidence of learning. And we're going to be very mindful this year about using terminology district-wide that is coherent and cohesive so that everybody knows what we're talking about. And we're talking specifically about 3 different pieces of evidence of learning. And this comes directly from our reading this summer. We're talking about product evidence, and product evidence is the stuff that students actually do in class. And product evidence could fall into one of 2 categories. It could be something that you do in class as a report, as a test, that counts towards your final grade, and that's product evidence. There's also product evidence that students could produce in class that teachers are using to collect to see how you're learning something so that they can adjust their instruction. That would be entered into the grade book as well for families and students to look at, but it would not count toward the final grade, but it would be there to help families and students understand, you know, I still need to do a little bit more work on these vocabulary words, or I still don't quite understand the different phases of mitosis and meiosis. I still need to work on this kind of a thing. So those are the things that we used to talk about as being formative and summative, but those words we feel have gotten so overused and misused that we're not using those words anymore. With students, with families, with teachers, nothing. It's just product evidence. What are you producing to show that you're learning? Now, we also talked a lot about homework. And the question comes back to why. Why are we assigning the homework? Is the homework something that a child is going to take home to practice. So this, a good example of this would be, and Jamie would understand this and appreciate this, multiplication tables and just practicing times tables. How quickly can I complete my times tables? And that would be something that child takes home to work on. They bring it back in class and the teacher wouldn't necessarily be grading it to see, are these answers correct right now? But have you completed this? Did you give it a try? And we would assign that work as a work study practice or a process grade. It would still count, but it wouldn't count as part of product because we wouldn't be counting to see if it's all correct. However, if they went home and they were assigned, say they've got a long-term project that they're working on, they're doing a report, and they're supposed to be turning in on Tuesday all of their resources that they're going to be using, and they're going to be turning those in, and that was homework, but they're going to be graded on, you were supposed to find 5 resources that were since 2010, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going to get graded on that. So that would be homework that would be counted as process or product evidence. So we're going to be doing a lot of coaching and teaching our teachers what the difference is and to tease out the reason behind the work. We're not just giving busy work for kids to go home and do homework. If they're going home and reading for 20 minutes, well, hopefully they're writing that down in a log. Today I read 20 minutes of Amelia Bedelia, and they're going to put that in the log, and the log would be something that gets counted toward the final grade as work that's being done. So there's some work that needs to be done around teaching and coaching them with our teachers. The third category would be progress evidence. And these are the standardized test scores that we get, whether it's the Fountas and Pinnell reading level, our NEWA score. We're going to try to put that into ALMA. Hopefully the program accepts that. But that's another piece of evidence we'll be collecting to see how are our students doing? What are they learning? What do they know? And where do we need to hone in a little bit better? Because what we're going to be looking at this year specifically is getting our intervention program up and running, something that Christine's going to be tasked with, looking at, okay, what kind of evidence do we have that proves that this child still doesn't have a grasp of silent E, and do they need to have intervention on that? Those kinds of things. So those are the 3 pieces of evidence that we're going to be looking at. We also did a big change, and we really narrowed down our competencies. We sat down in July and we looked at our competencies, and there were no less than probably 6,000 different competencies that teachers could select from.
But can you say that again?
6,000, 6 with 3 zeros, which that, if 6,000 of anything makes me anxious. Unless it's 6,000 Hershey Kisses, but even still, it would be a little troublesome. So we really pared down our graduation competencies and we focused them so that we have some K-12 competencies that would be things that we could use to track student learning throughout their career at Sanborn. And these are overarching competencies that are very broad, and I'll give you an example of one. Here's an example of a competency in English language arts, writing. The competency is students will construct task-appropriate writing for diverse purposes and audiences. So a parent could really watch their child learn how to write through different types of writing, whether it's narrative, telling a story, informative, giving some information about something, argumentative, explaining why they think that it's a good idea to paint the streets white to cut down on, heat or something. All of those things would be going on in that one competency. And we will all be working this year with helping our teachers, and this goes to some of our work with NEAS, identify the knowledge and skills under those competencies. What was happening before, it seemed like there was a competency for each piece of knowledge or each skill that a child needed to do, which was really diluting our work. By focusing on a list of competencies K through 12 that cover the 4 main content areas, English language arts, math, science, social studies, and also the specials areas of phys ed, health, visual arts, and music that students have from grades K through 12, we can now track their progress and look at what they might need intervention on and better hone in on knowledge and skills that they need to learn. There are other competencies for things like world language, but those would not be K-12 competencies because we don't have 1st and 2nd graders learning world language, but they would still have competencies. The K-12 competencies are things we want our students to be very good at doing by the time they leave us. Ties back to our Portrait of a Graduate, ties into our NEAS work. So that was a huge change. And by figuring out our competencies, now the work that's going to be done in classes with Steve, with teachers, and Donna and Christine and myself, figuring out in each marking period, what should a child know by the end of that marking period, so we can better hone in on what do they have to have really solid by the end of the marking period, And if they're not there by that point, what are we doing to get them there? And if they need to reassess on the knowledge and skills taught, it happens during that marking period, not by the end of the year, when they should already know how to do that in November. We're not going to be reassessing them in June. There are going to be deadlines. All of these things are sort of getting organized and categorized and really cleaned up, because we have the time now to go back to basics and thinking about that. So we also really cleaned up our terminology about what proficient means and talking about what it might look like for a child to be exemplary in something. So it's not a quote unicorn grade. It's kind of nice, and maybe it exists out there, but maybe our kids don't get that. And I've heard about this unicorn, but I've never seen it. Well, by really narrowing down what the kids need to learn in each marking period, we're going to know, well, are they exemplary? If say by the end of the first marking period, they need to have a solid understanding of all of their multiplication facts, and they blew through that by the end of September, that's exemplary. So that's a really clear indicator for us to give that child an exemplary for that, but that's just an example. So we're going to be talking about cleaning up our reassessment practices, making sure students have a plan if they need to reassess, say they didn't understand all the phases of mitosis and meiosis. Well, what have you done to study for that? Have you gone for tutoring? Have you looked at more videos? Have you done extra work? And then you're going to get reassessed, because if you don't know mitosis and meiosis, I'm certainly not going to have you start thinking about, how a flatworm might reproduce if we are to just cut it in half and let it go. So those are the kinds of things to think about with that. Yep.
That, I just wanted to make sure that we just pause and everyone hears me. We are changing the way that we do the assessments. You're not going to be able to reassess for competencies that happen in September, in June. We are going to expect that it happens during the period that it's taught within a reasonable amount of time. So if the first quarter is starting, I'm using very generic terms, and we're still working some of this out, but the gist of the plan is that if you're in the first segment of time, so if you have a unit that's 6 to 8 weeks long, you get to the last 2/3 of that unit, and you're starting to do some assessments and figure out what students know and are able to do, and you see that some students are struggling, they need additional instruction from the teacher. It doesn't always have to be an interventionist. That's one level of support, but the teacher, additional work at home, practicing, that would occur, and then the reassessment occurs right then, not 5 months later. The days of these rumors that go on, which some of them I find to be interesting because I can't seem to get a consistent line on it, that kids are turning in a bucket load of work in June to get their grade for a class at the high school is done, starting September 1st of this year. Done. That will not happen anymore, okay? Now, does that mean that students won't have an opportunity to reassess? Absolutely not. If a kid doesn't know how to do something, we need to help them, but we need to do it in a timely manner. It can't be over the course of a year. So I want to be clear, the philosophy of reassessment is totally fine. The practice has just been a little bit confused, and we're just tightening it up so that it's consistent for all of our staff.
High school has a form ready to go to PLC leaders that we'll be discussing this week.
Great, great.
And we also cleaned up our communication about reporting, because there's a lot of different terms. And again, a lot of this is terminology, and we're all using words and we don't agree on what all the words mean. And so we're clarifying reporting. And we're looking at 3 parts of the reporting. We're looking at the reporting system, which is ALMA, which is going to have stuff in there. It's going to be product grades that count toward the final grade, product grades that are in there because the teacher needs to keep track of where the kid is. There's going to be process grades that are things like the work study practices. Are they responsible? If I assigned them 20 minutes of reading, do they have it in the reading log? If I assigned them to come in with something for, gym class, that they brought that in. There's also going to be the progress rate. So the reporting system is going to have all of that. And the other nice thing about ALMA this year is we've rolled it into the student information system, so it's all a one-stop shop. We also clarified the purpose of our grade reports, or our report cards. The report card is a snapshot. It's a narrow report of what the child can do. Families can go into the reporting system and look deeper at what is connected to that. So if they earned a proficient in math, well, what was attached to that proficient? We're hoping that families go in there frequently, and the plan is, the hope is to have some, quote, kiosk kind of tutoring centers at open houses or meet the teacher night, so that parents who may not have logged in, forgot how to log in, are new to our district, can sort of get an overview of what this looks like. We also are going to make sure that our teachers, when they're entering the work into Alma, it's going to be either labeled as product, process, or progress. We're not going to have terms like formative, summative, intermediate, lab, report, whatever. It's going to be one of those labels so that we're all using the terms consistently. The other piece of this is part of our evaluation process with teachers in the past, and over COVID, we've sort of been busy with all kinds of other things. We're going to be making sure that the teachers are doing this as part of their professional responsibilities and keeping the grade book updated. There's no reason that a parent or a student should be going in February not knowing where they are because there's no grades been entered since November. It's got to be updated regularly. Regularly is going to look different for an auto shop class that they're fixing up grease lightning. That's going to take a while, compared to maybe a kindergarten class that they've been working in art on. Today I colored circles, and I know what a circle is, and next week it's squares and I can identify squares. So those kinds of things. So we really have a lot of flexibility in the plan, but there's also a lot of very important parameters and benchmarks for folks to meet. And it's the collective responsibility of everybody in this room who works for the district to make sure that that happens, because everybody in this room contributed to the creation of this plan. And with that, I'm going to stop and ask for questions for clarification.
Everyone's looking at Jamie.
Here we are.
You just happen to be in the front of the room.
Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah, so I have a lot of questions, comments, statements, whatever you want to call them. So on the mark, I didn't read Get Set Go. Not overly impressed with On the Mark. On the Mark, for those who haven't read it, talks about numeric grades don't work, aren't necessary, aren't useful. There's a lot of citing of research, and most of the research cited is the author's own research. So he's citing himself a great deal of the time. And he clearly has a set objective, because he continually sets up straw men to knock down. So he will create a straw man that nobody's arguing for so that he can slap it back down and then demonstrate what he's trying to get to. So, you know, we were saying that, well, we handed out these books and we're going to base everything on them. There's not been any discussion with this committee anyways on the books that I'm aware of. But those are some of the things that I found in reading the book that was of concern. Also in this discussion, I didn't hear anything about letter grades. I heard we're going to refine how we're defining proficient, and we're going to refine how we're going to define competencies, and we're going to better define how we're going to get and define exemplary. I didn't hear anything about how we're going to scrap those and move to a letter system, which was a directive of the board. So I'd be interested in, is this a transition plan for this year that then transitions to the letter grades? Where do the letter grades and the numeric grades that were set by the board 7-0 and 3-0 in this committee as a directives, where does that come in? I didn't hear anything about that.
Thanks. So it's, Jamie, we're talking about the difference between the reporting system of the letter grades and the work that teachers do to collect evidence. This document is about collecting evidence. We need to have more conversations here and as an admin team about how that evidence is portrayed to parents through that letter grade system. And that was a goal for the year. This is starting next week. So we're talking about, we have a few problems. So one problem, which the board is addressing through the letter grade system, is that parents don't understand what's coming home. That's one problem, and that needs to be backed up with evidence so that when you receive a letter grade, you understand what the evidence is that gave you the grade. Right now, we're working on the evidence to prepare for that conversation about the grades. So it's not really necessarily like a bridge thing for 1 year. It's what we view as the first step in a process that will be finished at the end of this year. So the goal was for the year, not for the summer. So it's
Right, yep, I agree.
So we just need more time, but we can't wait to deal with this problem. So the problem that we face as a district is that there are 6,000 competencies. We had to whittle that down just to function. It just doesn't work that way. It's not working. So we have to get, we have multiple problems. So the first problem is we have to know what we want students to know and be able to do in a linear school year in first grade in a course, right? In second grade, in third grade. So you have to have your ELA plan for that grade, your science, social studies. That has to happen for every grade, K through 8, and then in the courses at high school. That's just one problem. And frankly, it's a mess. It does not exist at the level that we would like it to. So the first step is to identify the competencies and then talk about the annual curriculum and the units that would be associated with the annual curriculum. On top of that, and concurrently, not necessarily, this is not in step order, right? Because then there's also the stacking of the curriculum. What are the expectations in first grade and how do you build on them in second? It can't be done one or the other. It has to almost be done simultaneously. The third piece is then how do you assess what students are know and are able to do in each specific unit of time, 6 to 8 weeks long. So first you have to plan the curriculum, then you have to sequence it and double check it, stacking. And then you have to figure out the assessments for every single spot. This is not going to happen in like 4 months to fix all of that. And then you have to report that out, right? So I think that the agenda item of discussing proposals for the A through F grading needs to be happening sometime in October probably, right? Because we have to continue to plan before we present that to you as a board, we have to backward plan what the evidence will be to support that grade and how it's going to link to the system that we're going to use. I want to be clear that the idea of progress, process, and product is trying to say to everybody, we have to have some things that are very clear. Product, you did this, you can do this. That's product. Process is about how you do the work to get to that, right? And then there's some process work that counts toward that grade specifically. And it's just like the difference, I guess the way I would put it is like, I can only put it in simple terms. When I was a kid, sometimes you were given math problems to do at home, but they weren't graded, they were practice. You did them at home. You got a check if you did them. Do you remember that system? Then there were some times when you did problems at home where they counted toward your final grade. They were a type of assessment. A formative assessment is what they called it. We have so many people using so many different terms in our organization. Remember, this manual is for the teachers, not the parents. Don't read this manual. This manual is designed to help our teachers tighten up how many standards there are and what counts toward product grade, which is what you know and can do, process grade, which is like your work habits and how you get things done and how you interact well with others. And then what was the third one? Progress grades is how are you doing on a sequence to get to that product grade. That's really technical stuff, but we have to figure that out before we can figure out, you have to have common terminology in order to build a system that's going to assess the curriculum. And Christine's only been in this role for 3 months, 2 months, 6 weeks. I mean, it feels like 6 months, but
Yes.
I mean, we are finding out that the curriculum in our district is going to be the biggest challenge with NEAS, with our accreditation. We have to straighten out the planned curriculum vertically and horizontally. And then Jamie, the conversation about how that lines up to whatever we use for numbers to make letter grades, we'll plan a matrix to do that. We've looked at 3 or 4 models, but that's not the purpose of this presentation. I just didn't want you to muddy the two things. They're different. But they are linked eventually, but we're just not there yet, but it's not a bridge for the year. It's a bridge, it's a planning process, and this is step 1. I guess, did I get that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You mentioned the manual. Is there something that's been handed out to the board? I don't have a manual or something to review, just what Patty's comments were.
To Tammy, when I had proposed the meeting goals and what we were going to discuss today, I did send a copy of it. But it's like I said, it was just for you folks to sort of get a preview of. We have not shared it widely with our teachers. And that's where I would like it to go first, so that they see what, you know, what they're talking about before we share it with the public at large.
So Jamie, the point of this meeting is to say we're working really, really hard on this issue and there'll be a lot more information coming up. We need to give our teachers what we're thinking, talk to them, train them, get feedback, but there's a lot to do here, right? So the 3 steps, we have to align the curriculum vertically and horizontally. We have to figure out what the tests are going to be for that. And then we have to plan exactly how we're going to report it. And then that will link to the letter grades.
So I would suggest that if you're going to be sharing this with the teachers, you should also be sharing it with this committee.
We hadn't seen it yet.
I actually just forwarded Patty's email that she had sent me to you, the 2 of you, sorry.
Feel free to take a look at it.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else before we move on?
I just want to say for the record, I thought Jamie would love the idea of a product. Because
I do like product.
yeah, product, process, right? Those are things that kids will hear in the world of work. What did you produce? How did you do this? So we were trying to mirror a language that we felt would be world of work linked or
I mean, I get the 3 and there is distinctions between them and the process that our kids go through is going to help them. So I have no problem with that. I just didn't see the final linkage as to what the goal was. And I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose sight of ultimately what we also want to have at the back end of this.
Thank you very much.
Is it saying
I
it's
got the
not?
email, but not the attachment.
She forwarded us the email that the attachment isn't coming through.
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you. I'll just make it easier for us to.
So I apologize that you guys didn't get that ahead of time. I did look at it and I have to say, I had the same question that Jamie had, but I kind of assumed the answer that you gave, that this was kind of at the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
And I like the systematic nature of everything that you described. I am like Jamie, I like product and I like to understand, I like terms that I can understand and that parents can understand.
Good. I think one of the keys to terms, especially with the process, product, and dang it was
Progress.
I keep forgetting progress. I don't care about that. I just want process and product. No, I think that those 3 things, the key is that if we adopt them as an organization, they need to become, the goal for us is to do way more with less. These are your standards for this year. This is the way that you demonstrate that you've done these effectively, right? One simple standard is knowing your multiplication table. What was your process for doing that? Did you work hard? Did you do it regularly? And if you didn't and you don't know it, then we know what the problem is. If you did it regularly and you worked really hard on it, you still don't know it, there might be a problem. And that's where we start looking at the grading and referral process for supports, right? You can see how the linkage, it's all linked, but it's a web. It's not necessarily like a linear, there's so many pieces to it. So we're trying to start by just simply getting our terminology consistent and then stopping all other terminology because that seems to be the first roadblock. So we spent a lot of time this summer at the admin retreat identifying roadblocks and the terminology and the inconsistencies of formative, summative, homework, this, that, and the other were really, really hard. And we did talk about, should we just revamp what those terms mean? We really felt like these 3 terms made way more sense.
Okay, let's move on. Strategic plan work and its overlap with NEASC.
Oh, great. So I that's my item. We have worked a lot this summer. We had a day in June, and then we had 2 full days last week where the administrators met and reviewed various aspects of what I would consider to be more academic components of the strategic plan. And I just wanted to first say thank you to Dr. Haynes. She led us through that conversation, and it was great for me because I was able to participate as a member of the conversation, not necessarily as the facilitator. So it really helped me to think about what I value and what's important, and all of the administrators. And I have to say that for two days, all day long, we ground it out, and we can't wait to present what we've been working on to everyone. It's just not quite ready yet. But we made huge gains this summer. Really, it felt so, I can't stress enough how good it felt to talk about teaching and learning for 2 full days. And not masks and quarantining. And I mean, it's the first time in a year and a half that we just sat and talked about teaching and learning. It felt fantastic. The team is really working hard to, I already kind of covered the overlap between when a school district gets accredited, you have to have a clear scope and sequence in your curriculum. And that is the glaring hole that we are really concerned about, that we have talked about in here for a couple of years. And had COVID not occurred, we would have tackled this way sooner. But we made a commitment to ourselves this summer that no matter what happens with COVID, we're going to try our best to keep going, because it's what keeps us going. I mean, it keeps us going, filled up on the inside emotionally, you know, to work on what we view as helping kids. And the thing that we feel helps our students the most is to be very clear about what you're going to know and be able to do at the end of this unit, and how it plays out in the game of the year and the sequence of your education. How better could it be to grow intrinsic motivation than to know how what you're doing is linked? So the team did an amazing job, and Dr. Haynes did a fantastic job leading us through it. I'm really excited, but we're just still working on it. So that really is just a brief update item on the agenda tonight. We do feel that these items are the items for the agenda for this year. Like we feel like these are we want to cover these monthly, right? We want to give you updates. We want to share things with you. We want to work on it. And, you know, we are working on the matrix for grading against whatever the scores are, and however we're going to do that. And we are looking at how the sequence for NEASC will help us, because we figure if we have to do it, it's a laborious process. We want to get as much out of it as we can to actually help us, instead of just doing it to go through the hoops. Anything you can think of in addition?
No, it's just it's a twofer. Doing the strategic plan preps us for NEASC, so it's nice when you can do a twofer. I love twofers, but you know, very rare in life we get those, but we'll take them when we can get them.
Well, we're being measured against NEASC rubric, which is used all over, not just New England, but schools all over the country and internationally too, that use that same rubric to measure what they're doing. So it makes perfect sense. Double dipping.
Any questions? Okay, moving on. Math. I split them out, K through 6 rollout, because they are technically separate.
Yes.
We're playing with all kinds of boxes at the SAU. There's more and more math stuff coming every day, and poor Donna has worked nonstop all summer. And I want to thank her publicly, because she has worked all summer long to make sure that teachers have the resources that they need to get started, have the access to the online components that they need to get started, K through 6, has set up and walked teachers through training, has procured videos for folks who couldn't make the training live so that they could watch it on their own time. Donna has done a fantastic job of getting everything put together and aligned, and getting teachers going for this. So everything is on path to where it's supposed to be. We also got a duplicate order, which is why we're awash in boxes, which we've got to send back. I don't know, it's not us, it's them, so.
The UPS guy looked like he was going to pass out.
He did, it was so bad, it was so bad, but so everything is going in the right direction, and I just wanted to thank Donna, because it's been fabulous.
I was really excited when I walked in and saw all those books. I can only imagine how much work you have had to put in.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good. We have, the teachers have their materials. We've had, like Patty said, the opportunity for the training. It was recorded so that K-6 teachers, if they were on vacation that week, still have access to the videos. The next step is getting the materials delivered to the teachers, and then getting the student access to the online pieces. We're not there for that piece yet, but we're making progress. So that's where we are.
And all of our teachers, K through 6, have been very excited, and anxious in means of like get their hands on stuff, wanting to get into it and get started with it. So it's been very positive over their summer after the year that they had last year, that they still want to come back and play math and do this stuff. So shout out to all the teachers for really stepping up and doing what it is that they do best and get ready for our students. So it's in a good place.
So the 7 through 12.
That's the next thing.
Oh, I'm
Any
sorry.
questions on the K
I was getting
through 6
excited.
rollout?
Everybody just looks at you, Jamie. We know you're.
I know, yeah, it's like, gee.
Waiting for you to raise your hand there. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say on the, it's good to hear on the math. I'm thrilled that everyday math is gone. And I thank you for the work that you've done for the kickoff. But to me, this is going to be the starting point of where we change. We make the turn and we start driving some better results in our math equation. And it starts at the youngest grades and it starts with this new program. So thank you.
I agree, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Okey-doke.
7 through 12, Donna was also instrumental in getting materials for us, for the teachers to use this year to pilot. Because as I had said last year, we have a full year pilot going on of illustrative math materials. They started with 1 day of training today, which Steve sat in on, and how did that go?
They're very excited. It basically was like a 2-hour session of instructional practices and why they use them, which many of our teachers actually use already. So it was actually very impactful. So know that works. But also then we had like a breakout session where they had to do some homework for almost 2 hours. And when I popped in there was a lot of collaboration and excitement. So I've been sharing that all day with everyone. So I'm excited to see that. There's more tomorrow, day 2.
It felt good to have
2 days
to
of
talk about
training,
teaching.
yeah.
That's, you said it before, it feels a little odd, it does. And a little foreign, but it also feels very familiar and good. So I'm just excited.
No, and I'll just add, I think people need to understand our math teachers, they've really got 2 things that they are working on this year, right? They've got new curriculum, learning how to use the tools, learning how to use all the different features of that and the resources. But then the other piece, which is independent of the curriculum that we choose, which is progress monitoring, right? All throughout the year, we know this is the work that Tom was speaking about earlier. We're going to be working with our teachers to have constant assessments happening so that they can be looking at where kids are at with these skills, the graduation competencies that Patty's come up with. And then once they've identified that we have kids that have gaps, what are we doing to address those gaps? How are we making use of the different intervention strategies that we have in the classroom? How are we making use of things that we have available outside of the classroom? And then the most important piece, now we got to reassess to see if those interventions have actually worked or not. If they haven't, then we've got to deal with that. If they have, great. Then those students slide back in. So that process, that's going to be a big goal in the secondary. So I don't want to speak for Matt, but in the high school side, that's going to be a big process that we're going to be looking at with all of our teachers, all of our content areas, math included. Math will have this added piece where they also have new curriculum, new resources to be looking at. So just be mindful when we're talking about some of the training that they're doing and some of the work they're doing. It could be either or, and both of those fit together.
And in addition to getting the training on what they're using for the year, because it's just a 1-year use, starting not next month, it's not September, starting in October, after the first 6 weeks of
Don't rush.
school have gone by, I don't even know what day it is anymore, it's just so bad. Starting in October, once we've got the first 6 weeks of school in the rearview mirror, we will start using the same process that we did for K6 at 7 and 8, and then at also 9 through 12. So it's going to be 2 parallel processes running to select a program materials that are going to suit, like we did with K6, our students for where they are.
With an eye on that linear and horizontal alignment, right? So Whatever we choose for 7th grade has to work for what we've already chosen in 6th grade. And whatever we choose in 9th grade has to work for what we choose in 7th and 8th. So it's just, I can't stress enough that an aligned and accurate curriculum it's the backbone of a strong academic experience. And it is where I feel we are the weakest. It is. It has to be fixed. Before anything else. Because you can't have intervention if you don't know what they know or don't know. The assessments have to be based on the curriculum. And everyone in here, all the teachers, the admins and staff, we all are working hard on figuring out how to tackle this. And thankfully, we've kind of already tackled it hard with math. And we have, just so you know, so you don't feel too overwhelmed by this, writing is pretty strong too. So we have Lucy Calkins writing units in K through 6, right? Or K through 8?
K8.
K8. That's really positive because we don't have to do that work again. The question is going to be, what do we do with reading? But we're going to do that in another year. We have to focus on one thing at a time and really fix the math right now. So part of the strategic plan is figuring out when we're going to tackle what. So I just wanted to tee this up carefully. We have to tackle one thing at a time and not overwhelm people, because for our K6 teachers, they all teach, or K5 anyway, they all teach every single one of those subjects. So you're asking them to do 4 or 5 pieces of work all at once. They can only do one thing at a time and do it right. So that's why we chose math first. So we get math taken care of. We're working on a sequence to move forward over a 5-year period and really work hard on this. The high school, it's a little bit easier because they each teach a content area and we can try to kind of align things a little bit more K7 through 12.
I'm excited. This all sounds great.
We're excited too.
Rome wasn't built in a day,
No,
so we're good.
We'll give it 2 weeks.
I will be excited if we can actually spend our year and our brain power talking about teaching and learning and not masks or no masks or plexiglass or whatever else we've been talking about for the last 18 months. Yeah, I mean,
Literally.
and I think our teachers feel the same way. The last 18 months, they've been difficult for staff. I think most of our staff in general in their professional career feel like they're constantly taking 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward. And I think most of them probably felt like in the last 18 months, they've taken about 7 or 8 steps back.
Yeah.
So we have to do something to help our staff recognize that this is a big commitment. It's a long-term commitment. We're all going to be in it with them, alongside them doing the work. I think it's going to be important for their morale and to build momentum for this work, because it's the only way that we're going to become laser focused on high achievement and learning for all kids.
Start celebrating wins.
That's it. Even the
Like, I
little
just want
ones.
the math.
The
A
little
lot
ones.
of
Yeah.
little wins along the
That's-
way that you can celebrate if you have the time to stop
Yeah.
and say, we made this growth, we made this change, we
Yeah.
put this in.
Yep.
May not calculate on the data table, but if I can get half the kids going, that's not that bad.
Yeah.
I'll take that as a win.
Yep, that's a
If
win.
if you like something or at least don't hate it, you're more apt to try harder at it.
No, it's a great point. Yeah.
Oh, we never finished early.
It's so hot in here. I think we've all been powering through. It's really hot here.
The hot,
Not complaining
knowing you guys have a.
How's the temperature
you guys have a
are?
busy night too, so.
For 68 degrees up there. We're down.
Can you what?
Can we just go home now?
Yes, you
We
may.
have to stay.
All right. Okay, our next meeting is 4 weeks from today. I have September 15th. There's nothing else. If there's anything that anyone wants to add to the agenda, let me know. Sorry, Jamie, I wasn't looking over at you. Go ahead.
Just a comment, we touched briefly on reading. I did just come out of the finance meeting. One of the things that we asked for in the finance meeting was just the final tally on what we spent on books. And Matt is going to pull that together. But I'd like to suggest to this group, it would make sense after spending that amount of money on books to publish what books were bought. So that people see where the money was just spent. So we bought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. We spent 6 digits on books. I think it would be beneficial for the community to be able to go online and see the classroom library list that we just purchased.
We would have to literally create that list for every grade level. That's a huge job. Some grade levels have hundreds and hundreds of titles. We don't have the manpower to go around and type up every single book. I mean, that would be a full-time job, Jamie.
Send me the invoices. I'll type them up into an Excel.
Are they in, but not every title is in the invoice. We bought kits, sets. It's not like that. We could do that. The invoice is for.
But are we saying we have no idea what books we bought?
We have lists of invoices. The issue sometimes comes in, Jamie, is there are some that are 1 or 2 offs that they'll say is on back order. And then we get an invoice with a new set of books that, okay, Nancy Drew and the Mystery of the Old Clock gets replaced with, something else. And it's not the same, right? Yeah, so it's not the same. But if you're advocating for us to publish the invoices, I don't know
We can
that,
publish the invoices. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's the public.
but I also don't know if there would be a problem with that with Teachers College because they're very persnickety about their lists.
Well, once we own them, if we want to share with the community what we purchased, that's fine. I'm just simply saying it's not as simple as printing. Printing the invoices is fine, but compiling the list is a problem. So when you get back, we'll talk, Gene.
Yeah, and what I'm saying, I'll have time. I can help.
Yeah. So we can.
Okay, how to pull it off.
Yeah, I mean,
There is-
that'd be like trying to send everyone a list of every book we have in our public school libraries. That would be like massive. We don't have that.
No, but we had a long discussion with the community. We talked about it in the budgets. We talked about it in follow-up meetings that we needed to buy these books with monies. And then we went out and we spent 6 digits on these books that we convinced the community that we needed. It would be good to be able to tell them what the books are.
Yeah, or we could at least take pictures of the libraries. They're big. It's a lot of books. It's not.
I mean, if it's books that are in the library, that's different, because books in the library get cataloged and you can search the catalog as to what books you want. I think what you're talking about are the books that are in classrooms for free reading, choice reading kinds of
At the
things,
level
right?
libraries.
Correct.
Trying to clarify,
Right,
yeah,
level
so.
are those in the catalog system too, the level libraries?
The level libraries are not in the.
I'm gonna
library
pause this
catalog,
because it's
but
not on the
we
agenda
can
and I'm
look
going
into
to,
it.
I'm gonna look into it and get back to you, Jamie. This is a Jamie question. It's not agenda, it's not an item for tonight. But I'll work with my team and get some more information and get back to you, okay?
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, we are adjourned.